kind of wondering. Like,
Well, I mean, honestly, have you ever seen polar bears this far south?
I didn't really like that article of Ralph Harris's, did you?
You know what? It was better than Andrew Nelson's, that's for sure.
Oh,
Yeah. Well, those guys, though, you know, Americans. What are you gonna do? It's Americans.
Yeah, okay. Oh. Did you have the coffee?
No. It's real good.
Well, welcome to Surrendered Image Video, and today I'm sitting here with Kyle May, and my name's Greg Gay, and so Kyle, I mean, we've been hunting, you know, polar bear for a couple weeks here now. We're just sitting back at the cabin and waiting for the coffee to get ready because it's still a little bit cool here in Canada in March, but I just thought I'd ask you a few questions and kind of sitting around looking at the flag, and you know, you're a good Canadian Alberta boy. What really is your favorite hockey team anyway?
Well, realistically, I haven't actually watched hockey since I was in about grade 4. I believe it was grade 4 or 5, and San Jose Sharks, if it actually just become a team. And actually, Jeremy White just told me that he's become a great big San Jose Sharks fan. So since then, I understand other teams have joined the ranks, but I just don't understand, you know, why people get paid so much to chase a puck around. So that's honestly, you know, and I realize that I don't make a good Canadian that way, but you know, I don't really care.
Well, I'm kind of ashamed of you, but having said all that, you know, you've asked a lot of people a lot of interesting questions on some of your interviews, and have you ever ridden a sled in -40 and really enjoyed it?
No, actually, I was just actually weeding out authors for the Surrendered Image site by asking those questions. And every single one that said yes, that was a strike against them, actually, and Jeremy White almost didn't make it because of it. However, as a result, I let him back in because apparently he thinks he's Paul or something, and it's all good. It's all good.
What is it that you really do with your spare time nowadays? I mean, you've got lots of spare time. You've had no problems at all lately, like mold in your house and moving and all kinds of stuff. But when you do have spare time, what does Kyle do?
Well, you know what? If you just want to pan the camera that way, those are 4 of 6 children that are mine. And honestly, I don't know what spare time means. I once watched a television show. I really did, and I got about 20 minutes in, but I don't know, then I had to probably go change a diaper or something, so you know, I'm going to try that again someday.
Well, when I first met you, you were really into a lot of music and stuff, you know, so can you tell us a little bit about it, your background and music and how all that kind of comes together?
Sure, I grew up with a fairly musical mother, and she was out doing a lot of country music at the time. So I got the opportunity to go out and kind of learn by playing with her a bit, and it was kind of cool. We got to do some really cool things. I got to play with Johnny Cash's sister. I got to meet some pretty cool musicians along the way. Eventually, I started kind of coming up with my own rock and folk bands, and in 2004, one of the duos that I had started was nominated for 2 Canadian Christian Music Awards. That was pretty cool, and I've had one of the songs that I wrote there actually placed 4th out of I think 6,000 entries or something. So it was kind of cool. There's lots of that. Eventually, you know, throughout that, I got to meet some pretty cool people. I got to play with. Actually, I just interviewed Kemper Crab here last week. And he's a member of a former member of Caedmon's Call, member of Archangel. He was with Metal Blade Records for quite a while. So he's one of the gentlemen that I got to do some music with, along with Matt Brower. And eventually, this really strange guy, he's Greg Gay, I think. And he decided, you know, he brought me back into kind of 80s rock, and kind of more of a Chicago style. And I thought that was pretty cool. Pretty cool.
Well, that would even show your inexperience, though, because Chicago was really 70s.
Well, you know what? The thing is, when you get past 1992, it's all the same. So,
yeah, you know, bad. I didn't say that out loud.
Well, you know, no, there was some really good rock in the 80s. I really did like some of the Metallica stuff that came out. But actually, they probably got better in 91, if I think correctly. So realistically, I should say, you know, anything pre-1981. is kind of all the same, but it's pretty good. You know, honestly, just today I was listening to a mix, and the mixture was, Supertramp, the Rolling Stones, but then I went to Petra, Stephen Curtis Chapman, Melody Joy, and ended off with some Eric Church. So I mean, I'm kind of eclectic as far as music goes.
Wow.
I like it all. So
Melody Joy, I heard she's a real up and coming, talented young lady.
Well, I've heard that too from her father and from a radio show in Three Hills, and actually she just got Craig Learmont to do some of her mixing. So I'd say that she's on the right track.
Well, there we go. So when I first met you, you were just a really young guy, like, I don't know, 20, 21.
I was a lot
like
skinnier.
And like, you were, the Kyle I knew then, like, you pretty much wanted to be a rock star. Like, for those of you who don't know, he's an amazing drummer. And I got to play with Kyle quite a bit, and, I'm a guitar player. We played in different worship bands and stuff like that. And that's kind of how we met. But you were focused on music, and you really weren't concerned about how people thought about God or what the relationship was with the Lord and things like that, and certainly nothing theological that I could ever tell. What happened to you? How did you get to where you are now?
Well, I think realistically, back then, you're right. The only reason I was even in that town is because I had recorded an album with a band, and the town had so much musical potential, I thought it'd be a good idea to stay. And I just, back then I didn't really understand the difference between an affiliation with the institutionalized church and an actual walk with Christ, right? Didn't know anything theological, really. I knew some of the Bible stories. It's not that I hadn't been raised around it. I just hadn't really cared, I don't think, a lot. And so, outside of knowing that, God was going to smite you dead for reading a Mad magazine, or that he stole some of my skull rings when I was, apparently that's what I was told. Religious church. If they went missing, God took them. So, outside of that, I really didn't know, and there was always this ingrained belief. Does God even really exist, right? And that was something that I found after an interview. Not an interview, sorry.
And I remember that you were on Facebook all the time talking about, does God really exist? And you used to like to stir the pot with religious people and cause trouble.
Well, because religious people are very fun to harass, and I've had to stop that in my New Grace days here. But religious people are really fun to harass. However, eventually, after a long time I did a lot of reading. I read a lot of. I'd go on. I'd read Dawkins, or I'd read Hitchens, or I'd study and just people that really promoted humanism, right? And it just made a lot of sense to me. And then I'd go and I'd read their counterparts, and I really didn't want what their counterparts had to, what they said to be true. But I was willing to remain open. Eventually, throughout time, though, I came around and I started actually attending a very religious church, per se, and that claimed they weren't religious. And I won't go into it, but there was just a lot of things that I saw there that weren't very good. And they came and they asked me if I'd consider becoming the youth pastor or youth leader, and talked about running small groups. I was on their worship team, and there was some talk about me starting to lead some of the worship there too. And in some ways you're going, wow, this is such an honor, right? Such an honor, because now I must have made it, right? I'm in the church, right? I know God exists, so therefore I must do what the pastor says, and wow, what an honor that he would consider me to do this, right? One time I came to him and said, hey, I think this person in the church is having some trouble, and he came back to me and said, I think you're the best guy to handle that. So it was kind of like, this self-righteous,
you'd made it. You got it.
Yeah,
you
exactly.
Had a potential title.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I could not have told you why Christ died on the cross yet, though. I just figured that for some reason, there was an angry God and he sent his son, even though they were one and the same, but couldn't really figure that out. Still wasn't really searching that portion out. So anyway, eventually that was really bothering me. A lot of what was going on in the church was really, really bothering me. It was very much about the pastor and pastoral leadership and religion, and not a lot about what was going on with people's hearts, not a lot what was going on anywhere else. We were told we were to build a mega church, right? That was the goal, build a mega church. And we did sermons that were strictly only on the pastor, in 2-hour events that were only dedicated to the pastor. So I eventually called the pastor out and naively thought that this was something that could be done and talked about, and that was very, very wrong of me. However, my friend Greg Gay passed me a book called God Without Religion by Andrew Farley. And after reading it, I found these newfound ideas, and I went, "Oh, this is so great! I've got to show these to my friends at the church, right? This is what Christianity is all about, right?" So I thought, well, I mean, even if they don't agree with me, I can definitely go there, and I can just show it to them. And hey, Christians can agree to disagree, right? I mean, that's what it is. We've got the basic belief that Christ died for us on the cross, right? Right, that we've accepted him as our Savior. And so I naively went and asked these people these questions. And by the next Sunday, I was completely shunned from that church. People would not talk to us if we walked in the door. My wife went to go give someone a hug who just brushed her away and kept walking. It was someone that she gave a hug every Sunday. It was good friends with. And we found out basically the pastor had kind of shut us down, right, and had shunned us from the church, especially for asking questions that were based on tithing and other leadership type questions. So then what was kind of interesting, the next day I don't know why, I went to go write something and talk to one of them on Facebook, and I noticed, and I know Facebook, hey, you know what, in this day and age, Facebook seems to be the be all and end all. My grandparents don't even understand what it is, let alone the internet, but in this day and age, it's a big thing. And so I went and saw, hey, this is interesting, we've been defriended by this person. I started looking, and everybody that belonged to that church had defriended us, right? So I really thought, wow, there's something to this grace teaching, right? If people are that afraid of it, if people are not willing to even look at it, right? There's obviously a huge problem. So then I went ahead and I did ask someone. I did get a hold of someone and said, "What's going on?" And I was told, "Well, you have a different theological belief than we do now."
So basically, Andrew Farley got you kicked out of church. I can take no responsibility.
Well, no. Andrew Farley, if you're watching this, because I know we share some of the same friends, you most definitely got me kicked out of my church. So, thank you.
So, well then, speaking of Facebook a couple minutes ago there, yeah. I mean, then it was no more than just a few days later, like, I'll never forget that, talking to you about this, and you were saying that, like, Greg, I get it, like, this is what I've always wanted. I've always just wanted a relationship with Jesus without all this religion stuff, and you just, like, hit the ground running, and then one day I wake up, and, Kyle has started this thing called Surrendered Image on Facebook, and I'm looking at that, and seriously, I'm thinking, like, oh, man, what's this about? Like, and then I looked like, oh, there's like 30 likes. What's with that? And I didn't even know what it was. And, then I find out I'm an administrator. Now, how does that work? So, I mean, how did that get started, and what did God put on your heart there?
Well, immediately after I left the church, it seemed to create a bit of a stir, because we'd been good friends with the pastors, and things were going on there. And so I started getting emails, Facebook emails, right? Which was kind of interesting, because some of those that had taken us off re-added us so they could send emails. And I would get emails like, "Hey, you know what? I really want to know what this stuff is about, because we really don't believe in the church, but we are continuing to go. And please don't tell my wife, or please don't tell my husband. What is this new theology that you're into? This sounds just bizarre, but it's something I'm quite interested." I was literally spending 3, 4, 5 hours a night talking and answering questions and emailing people back, and it was. I thought, you know what? We need a resource page, right? Just a resource page where I can post things that people can come on and they can look and see. Hey, you know what? this is what I need to read to find out about grace. But then I found out that some of them were going, well, you know what, if you don't, we don't really want to read, just tell us. So I thought, okay, I'll write little blurbs. I'll just write little blurbs and put it up. But then I realized, hey, I'm 2 weeks into this. I don't know enough about grace. So I looked at you and on Facebook and I thought, well, he's probably going to think, oh my goodness, what's this? And he's probably going to laugh at me. But you know what? I'm going to put him on as an administrator because he'll be able to put some good resources on there because he knows all this stuff, right? And since then, I found out you don't know everything. But you know what? I think you know enough. So no, but realistically, so I added you on, and people just kind of kept joining. And when we got to 100, I was like, hey, that's great. It's gonna be 100. That's enough for a cult, right? But I guess Grace isn't a cult, so that's a good thing. So sorry, I've been watching a show called The Following lately. It's about a cult leader, and he had like 100 members, and it just I've got ADD, Greg. So anyway,
Okay.
yeah. So that's kind of how that went, and since then, it's been about 6 months now. I think we're at 4,000 readers. We've had people from the States, published authors, unpublished authors, pastors join us. Right now, we're sitting at you, myself, Jeremy White, Ralph Harris, and Andrew Nelson, who's joined us full time as writers on Surrendered Image, and it's just been going great.
How has God's grace really worked in your life, and what does that really mean to you?
Well, actually, I've become very religious about grace. No, you know what? I could go on for a long time about it, but I think overall, the basic point that I'd want to make is how freeing is grace? How freeing is grace? It encompasses. We couldn't do it under the law. We couldn't do it under the law, and God found a way, made a way for us to be able to live and to be accepted and not to have to live under such a burden. So how gracious is grace, really? And I think that's just basically, that's just the bottom line, right? The tip of the iceberg.
Well, it really is the gospel
but that
of grace,
is,
isn't it?
absolutely.
That's the message. It's not that grace is something, it's easy to kind of major in the minors.
Yeah.
But this is majoring in the major.
Yeah.
Really, and it is, we've talked about the hyper grace thing too. It is hyper grace.
Well, it is. I actually love that term. It was actually set up to be a derogatory term to put down anybody that was into the grace movement, and I don't think it was well thought out at all. Honestly, let's take it and be proud of it, right? What a great term, hyper grace. If you really look up in the dictionary and see what hyper actually means, it's everything this movement encompasses. So yeah, hey, you know what? Not only am I Canadian, I am a great hyper grace believer. So I'm gonna embrace it and take it, and works with my ADD.
Can you tell us a little bit about your book?
It's very bizarre how that came to be. Actually, you know what? My wife Barb deserves a lot of credit there. She kept seeing some of my writing and seeing all this stuff, and she kept telling me, "You need to write a book. You need to write a book." And I kept saying, "Oh, honey, you know what? People like Ralph Harris write books. I just read them." And so basically, through a little bit of time, she convinced me to send some stuff away. Just to some editors to see if they'd even be willing to work with me, and it all came back rather positive, and that they wanted to, and that the stuff I was writing on was very insightful. And I thought, well, some of it's regurgitated Andrew Farley, but others is stuff that he hasn't hit on, and so I kind of went from there. It started out it was just going to be a blog, little blurbs trying to tell people about Christ, but from there it became exciting because one thing after the next just kept hitting, and I went, wow, you know what, I've got so much to say. So
that's coming out this fall, right? Fall 2014?
Yeah, it should be ready by about then.
So you guys want to keep an eye out for that. We'll keep you posted. We'll keep you posted on some of Melody Joy's music coming up, and some other exciting things. We don't know what's going to happen next. But a couple other questions for you before I let you go. And this is really important. Tim Hortons or Starbucks?
Oh, wow, you're getting into the questions I was asking our American friends. All right. Starbucks.
One more question then before we go. I mean, you've asked this to everybody, and it really puts people on the spot. Now, we've been hunting polar bears for like the last couple of weeks. But
3.
really, after your experiences with polar bears and rattlesnakes, would you take the rattlesnake with the tent
No.
or the polar
No,
bear?
every American that I've asked this question to has said,
What's that?
here, kids, come here.
You gotta sing the whole
We
thing.
need, oh yes, we need bloopers.
Oh, Canada. Come on, Kelly. Come on, Jesse. Our home and native land. All right, we're good. All right.
Hey, buddy.
Okay, kids.
You should have said
Oh,
Oilers.
so.
Okay, we're done now.
Yeah,
Thanks,
I
Marie.
should've.